This is a tutorial on a California residential purchase agreement, and I will make this form widely available to the public. Now, if you're a Cavour agent, you can access and fill out this form on the Forms Manager. For everyone else, you can download a PDF of this form. I will put a link in the description so you can access this form. And in this tutorial, I will show you how to fill it out. Now, if you are looking for a California Association of Realtors form, that is different. I have a tutorial on that form, and I will link to that tutorial in the description. But this is a proprietary form that we will go through together. Now, we start here by putting the date that we prepare the form here, the name of the buyer or buyers, the property address, simple enough, assessor's parcel number, which is the tax ID for a property, which can be found on a county assessor's website, on an MLS listing, on a property tax bill. You can ask the seller. If all else fails, leave it blank. Line 7, we're going to write in the numerical purchase price. Then we're going to rewrite it in text form. We have that redundancy in there, so there's no misunderstanding about what the offer amount is. Close of escrows on line 10. Now you can put in a calendar date, or what's more common is a number of days, and I put 30, which is fairly typical for an escrow period. Now, if there are agents involved, you're going to write the name of the brokerage, the name of the agents, and then their respective license numbers. Then we move on to financing. Now, we start with the initial deposit, also known as the earnest money deposit or EMD, and that is typically between 1 to 3% of the sales price. So since we have this made up figure of $1 million as a purchase price, we'll put in a 1% or $10,000 earnest money deposit that will go into escrow. Now, if this were an all cash offer, we would still do a deposit, but we would just check this box here and then we'd skip this part here. But instead, we're pretending that there's a conventional loan of 80%. So the buyer's putting 20% down, that's $200,000. They're getting a loan for $800,000. So we put that right here. By default, it's conventional. If this were an FHA or VA loan, you'd check the appropriate box. And it's going to ask for the balance of the down payment, which is the down payment minus the earnest money. And if you add the loan, balance of down payment, actually all of this together, it should total that same purchase price we put up top. So that's how you can balance this out. The down payment plus the mortgage plus the earnest money should balance the total purchase price. Both parties initial at the bottom, and we move on to page 2. Now, another very important section, this is broker compensation. Now, if you are doing this form, if you're drafting it as an agent, by law in California, you must have a buyer representation agreement filled out. I have that form separately. I did a tutorial on that. I should link to that in the description as well. But you'll have that buyer representation document filled out, and then you're going to ask here for the seller to pay the buyer's broker. Basically, a seller credit to the buyer to cover that buyer's cost. It's a buyer cost that you're asking the seller to pay. So customarily, you'll see 2.5% written here. You can add on a fee, 2.5% and $500, or you can do just a flat fee, or you can check this box and write in something that's different. But this should cover it right here. If you leave this blank, then there's no broker compensation. So keep that in mind. All right, additional terms, just auxiliary lines that you can use here, and fill in with whatever terms haven't already been mentioned. Now we come down to, by the way, there is some verbiage here regarding proof of funds. Now, when you submit an offer, you should have proof of funds, a bank statement, something like that. You can redact that account number, but the proof of funds is going to show that the buyer has cash to cover the amount they deposit in escrow. And if that's a cash offer, then it's the whole purchase price. If it's a down payment, then you need to show a proof of funds where you have enough cash to cover the down payment. Lender verification from approval letter from the lender. And those really should be enclosed with the offer when you submit it to a seller, but you have up to 3 days to send it after you send the offer. Allocation of transaction costs. Now I'm going to show you what is customary for Southern California. Northern California, if you look in the description, I will link to a chart of who pays what when it comes to closing costs. Or I should say, transaction costs like settlement, like the county transfer tax, title, escrow, etc. But if you look in the description, I will link to a cheat sheet that has a grid for all the counties in California. Sellers should, regardless of where you are in the state, pay for compliance for smoke alarm, carbon monoxide, water heater bracing. That's required by law. The seller should pay. Also, customarily, the seller pays for natural hazard disclosure. We're doing an environmental add-on. We're putting our preferred NHD provider of fastnhd.com. And we have the seller paying for a wood-destroying pest inspection report. Provider, we're letting the buyer choose. But of course, you can put the seller. And are there other reports, other repairs, anything that needs to be done? You can put that in here and check the appropriate box, and we move on. Now we come down to the owner's title insurance policy. Now in Southern California, the seller typically pays for the owner's title insurance policy. Again, you can use my chart in the description to see who pays what in Northern California, because it varies county by county. Even sometimes within a county it varies. And so we put seller because we're doing this kind of the Southern California style because it's more uniform down here. And then we have each paying their own escrow fees. Now we're saying the escrow holder is the same as the title company, and we check this box. But often in Southern California, the escrow company is a separate company than who's doing title, which I think is less efficient, but I don't make the rules. That's just how it works down here. And so if it is, you just write it in there, write in whatever the escrow company name is. All right, down here, seller typically pays for the county transfer tax. Most cities don't have a transfer tax, but if they do, we have a seller paying. And if there's an HOA, we have a seller paying for the doc prep. We have the buyer paying for the transfer fee and the seller paying the HOA certification and demand fees. Now, this, of course, is all negotiable. I mean, you can have the seller pay all of it. It's your choice. I'm just showing you what's customary. We go down here. The seller pays for home warranty. And you can look up home warranty prices if you need to, but $1,000 is fairly typical. And we're putting the buyer's choice. My opinion is that the buyer should always choose the home warranty company, because the buyer is the one that's going to be stuck on the 1-800 number calling and dealing with the home warranty company if they need to make a service call. So let the buyer choose which company they're going to have to put up with. And then you have these auxiliary lines where either party can just write in anything. All right. Now, items included and not included in the sale. Now, this has, in real property, if it's affixed to the premises, it's part of the real property and it conveys. But this spells it out to reduce the probability of a dispute about what goes and what stays. And so you'll have this default verbiage, plus you can add in appliances or other maybe personal property that you want to stay. So we have washing machine, we have the dryer, refrigerator, stove, television. There's these spaces after each line where you can write in something like, downstairs or den, or I mean, you can basically add more info for context to see which appliance you want to stay. So it's contextual information. Security cameras, electric vehicle chargers. So all sorts of commonly referred to appliances, or even things that a seller might think they can take, a buyer might want to stay, and it gets addressed here in writing so there's no misunderstanding. And then there's even blank space for additional items or items you want to exclude. Maybe there is real property that would convey a chandelier, as an example, but that seller wants to take it with them. They need to put that in here, that the real property that would otherwise convey is actually being excluded from the sale. Additional items included, maybe the garden gnome. Well, that's personal property, but the buyer wants the garden gnome to stay, so they write it in here. You get the idea. All right, now we move on. There's a section here regarding leased items, and that's usually solar. You can read it if you need to for more information. I mean, solar is going to come up. And then we come down to contingencies. Now, by default, there's a 17-day loan contingency, but what if it's a cash offer? Usually there's no loan contingency with a cash offer. So instead, you check this box. Now, if you need to modify the default time period, you can also write in a number here like that, but 21 days. And appraisal, same idea. You can extend it here if you want. It's a default 17-day appraisal contingency. Or if it's cash, you don't need an appraisal. So you just check this box. Property investigation, by default, 17 days. Or you can make it longer or shorter. Often in a cash offer, you do like a 10-day inspection period. or you waive it, which I do not recommend. I mean, it's in here if someone needs it, but that's very rare. That's like an advanced investor would do something like that. I do not recommend waiving the investigation contingency. You can make it really short, but don't waive it. Title contingency, to make sure that you're protected with liens, easements, issues on title. I would not waive a title review contingency. And insurance. What if, so that's a big issue in California, of course, due to perennial wildfires here. So there's an insurance contingency to make sure that people can get insurance on a property. Don't waive this. I mean, it's here for some people if they need it, but you want to keep it in a default as part of the investigation period, 17 days. So I would leave all of this alone. And if you're a cash buyer, then you can waive the loan and appraisal, but leave everything else. All right, seller disclosure period. Seller has 7 days to deliver disclosures to the buyer. We move on. And then buyer has 5 days to review them. Tax withholding. Now, this is a lot of just boilerplate verbiage to protect the parties. Should an issue arise, they can refer back to this document and see what is the buyer's right to cancel? What is the seller's right to cancel? What's a written curative demand if one party is not following the terms of the agreement? You can put them on notice. And so that explains everything here. I won't go into it. That can get lengthy. This isn't a 1, 2, or 3 hour class. This is a, how many minutes are we in? This is hopefully less than 15-minute tutorial on how to fill out a purchase agreement. And this is a professional grade form. I mean, you can do a purchase agreement on a napkin, but that's going to lead to a lot of problems. So you want something like this, and this is professional grade. Liquidated damages, both parties initial here. This is if the buyer has removed all contingencies at the last minute for whatever reason, can't close escrow, well, then their deposit is non-refundable. Both parties initial here, we move on. Does the buyer intend to occupy the property as primary residence? Line 219, check that box, yes. Now, if they don't, of course, 220, but we're pretending that it's a primary residence. Okay, and this has to do for tenant occupied property. If there's someone else that's occupying the property, this section right here, and it basically says that delivery upon possession, seller's going to provide buyer all their keys and clickers. And there's some verbiage here regarding disputes, mediation. There's an arbitration section if you want to enact it. You don't have to, but you can initial down here to elect the arbitration section. But mediation is the first course of action to resolve any dispute. And then, so on this page, 8 of 12, there are 3 sections. Oh, there's 2 sections, where both parties are going to initial. The other one I was thinking of is on the prior page, because both parties are going to initial the liquidated damages, and that's on 7. So both pages 7 and 8 require 2 sets of initials. Additional provisions. This tells you more. This is contextual information that you can go back to. It's the unabridged terms. So counting days, deadlines, things like that are important to know. A notice of the supplemental property tax bill. All right, we go on. We're moving on. We're almost done. Hang in there. Additional terms. Nice, big, open space to write in anything that wasn't already mentioned. We get down to the expiration of the offer. There's a nice little provision. The buyer can withdraw the offer. And, of course, if prior to receiving acceptance from the other party, buyer's going to sign. They're done. If the seller wants to sign, to accept, they sign here. If they want to counter, they check this box, subject to counter, and they still sign it. Either way, if the seller's going to counter or accept, they're going to sign. It's just if they counter, they check this box on line 364. And then down here, this is where the real estate brokers fill out their information and sign. This is where the escrow holder fills out their information. And we are done. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment. Again, in the description, you will find links to everything that you need. And I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.